Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We will wait a few minutes. So if you don't already have it out, probably a good idea to have the data in front of you for this assignment, as well as the instructions. The data is in a Excel file, and the instructions are in a Word document. So I'm pulling that up on a second screen here right now for me. So. Everybody's doing okay still?
Yes.
Good. Just walked across campus and I am dripping wet with sweat. It's so humid outside.
Bad today. Ugh.
That just means it's time for me to go to Colorado for the summer.
I bet it is a lot nicer there.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of places there that they've had a lot of the virus and a lot of deaths. So it's, in fact, I've even heard that they think that a lot of people somehow got it in Colorado at the ski areas and then went back home
No.
through, you know, like at Christmas, and I don't know.
That's
Everybody's still healthy and doing okay, I guess.
so far
It
here.
sounds like, yeah, it sounds like we're probably going to gradually get a little bit back to some sort of normal, I hope. What are you guys hearing any information or rumors about what's going to happen in the fall for classes? Anybody?
What was the question?
I was just wondering if people are talking about or making conjectures about what might happen in the fall for classes. Will we be
I'm not entirely
back in the
sure what would
classroom?
happen. Hopefully back in the
Say
classroom.
again?
Hopefully
Yeah.
back in the classroom.
Yeah. Everybody's classes are going okay that were not online and now are? Anything I need to know about to reach out to teachers about or anything?
No, my classes are going okay.
Okay.
No, Lone Star here in Houston is going all online for fall. Like they're continuing.
For sure.
Mhm.
Already.
I have
They've already
a friend
announced
that's,
that.
yeah, I have a friend that's an adjunct professor in the
Uh-huh.
Woodlands, and they're going all online.
Wow. That will be interesting.
Yes.
We'll give it about another minute or two, and then we will go ahead and get started. If you're just joining, be sure that you do have the instructions up as well as the data set so that you can see what we're talking about. And then I also have the chat open so that you can, if you have questions, I don't know if you guys do or do not have microphones. Also, I'm recording this, so I will put it in our course materials area. So if you need to come back and reference it, you can. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to talk about the data first. So it looks like I'm looking over, not at the screen. You guys are right here in front of me, but I've got the data. Basically, what I've done is set up a set of data, and I've tried to make something that is kind of as realistic as possible. And so I've, through the years, talked to former students and talked about what they did with regard to measurement evaluation when they left A&M and they got into the real world, and kind of what types of data and what types of questions did they need to answer. So the data that you see in the Excel file is called approval and transaction data. And if you just scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that there's data through line 47. But actually the way that this is set up is the first two lines are just headings. So there's 45 people, if you will, in this data set. So they all have an employee number, which again, just shows you that there are 45 of them. And then kind of comparing the instructions and the data, you'll notice on the instructions that I outline 4 demographic pieces of information. And demographic information are just identifiers for data itself. So I've got males and females, S and M. And so if you look at the data, you can see scrolling down, there's a mix of males and females in the group. And then I've got age. And again, looking at the instructions, the lowest age is 25 and the highest age is 65. So you can see that there's a wide range of ages in that column. And then I went ahead and made some class intervals for you. So 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and then 65 plus. And then there are different years at the company. So the lowest year at the company is 1 up through 15 years at the company. And then again, I made some class intervals for you. So 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and then 11 to 15. And then lastly, with the demographic information, there are 2 levels at the company. One is chiefs and one is managers. So let me stop there and let anyone have any questions about just the demographic information? Again, if you don't have a microphone, you can also type questions in that I can see and read. Okay, so everybody okay with the demographic information? Okay, so hearing no, okay, got a couple of thumbs up. So hearing no questions, I'm going to move on. Again, I'll kind of compare the instruction sheet and the data. And then the next set, or the rest of the data that you see are what I'm calling variables. And I would say that these are measurables, if you will, so things that are measured about each of the people in our data set. And the variables are something called determination, approval, helpfulness, development, transactions, and that's in thousands of dollars, and then some measure of hours per week. So if you look now at the data, determination ranges from a score of 10, 20. Approval ranges from 30 to 50. Helpfulness score ranges from 50 to 75. Development score from 1 to 5. Transactions, again, are in thousands of dollars. I don't have a range. And then hours per week, 30 to 50. Go ahead, and I think it does say this somewhere, but if you're taking notes, for all of these variables, higher scores are better. So if you need to write that down, go ahead and write that piece of information down. Higher scores are better. So any questions about just the variable, the demographic information, the 4 variables that are demographic, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variables that measure something about the employees. And again, higher is better. So any questions before we move on?
So the higher scores is just for in general, or is it just for the variables?
Well, I mean, obviously, higher years at the company means they've been there longer. Higher age just means they're older. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that, because most of what you're going to be doing, answer my questions, has to do with the variables themselves. So the very first person has 73 in transactions, so $73,000 in transactions, which is higher than the next person who has 55,000. So, you know, higher, that very first person has a 68 for helpfulness. That means that they are considered more helpful than maybe the person who's underneath them that has a score of 50. So higher in something means more or better. Okay, so let me just say a couple of things before we actually move on to those questions. Again, if you are just joining me, this is kind of based on me talking to former students who've been in this class, who've gone out into the workforce and needed to be able to use what they learned in class. And it's really kind of a last project, kind of a capstone project for this class. So that you have to use what you've learned pretty much all semester to do this work. The other thing I'll say is that this is 100%, 1,000% an individual assignment. So you are not to work with other people. You are not to turn in something that looks like someone else's work. This is your work, because for a lot of this, how you present it and what you say is up to you. So it's not pairs, it's not groups of 3. And I've had, particularly when we've done this, I've taught this class in an online version. I've had some students get themselves into some trouble because they end up working with people and turning things in that are very, very identical, if not 100% identical, very, very close to another classmate. So know up front that this is your work and your work only, and so just treat it that way. The last thing I'll say before we move on also is that, particularly for these first 2 questions, there's not a right and wrong way. There's many, many different ways to answer the first 2 questions. So when we go over that, it's up to you how you want to answer these, how you want to present the data. So let's look at them. The first question says, summarize the demographic information using frequencies, means, and standard deviations and/or class intervals with tables, graphs, and text. So what you're going to do is on that, the sheet that walked you through how to do Excel for t-tests, z-tests, means and standard deviations, the thing that you turned in last night, the very first page, which I said that you didn't necessarily need to have already looked at, walks you through how to do pie charts and bar charts and all those types of things. So what you're going to do for question number 1 is using the information from that first page that teaches you how to do pie charts, etc. Summarize gender, age, years at the company, and level at the company. And that needs to be a combination of tables, graphs, and then sentences that where you say in sentence form, a summary of that data. So let me stop right there. Any questions about that? Do you see what you need to do? So what you're going to eventually turn into me is a Word document. And so you'll do your analysis, data analysis in Excel, and then bring the chart or the bar graphs, pie graphs into that Word document. You can set up tables in the Word document, but there's four demographic things that in question 1 you are being asked to summarize. So either verbally or in the chat box, which of those things do you think you would maybe need to use means and standard deviations? Which of those pieces of data would it be appropriate to maybe present a mean and a standard deviation?
For the AIDS, like the mean of the AIDS, or the mean of like the years of the company?
Yeah, so age would be one that you could add them all up and then divide by 45 because there's 45 of them. So you could present the overall average age and standard deviation. And remember, anytime you give a mean, you always give a standard deviation. What would be another one that you think might be appropriate to give a mean and a standard deviation of? I would say there's one more.
Did he already say the years at the company?
I didn't hear if he did, but that would be the other one.
Okay.
So it makes sense that you could present the average age and standard deviation of age, average years of school, and standard deviation of years at company, not years in school. Okay. Does it make sense that you would give the average level at the company?
No.
No, because that 1 and 2 is just a distinguisher of if you're a 1, you're a chief. If you're a 2, you're a manager. So it does not make sense to add up all the level at company and then divide by 45 and then find the standard deviation of that. I gave you some for age, let's say. For age, I gave you some class intervals. What else might you do with age and those class intervals? Any thoughts?
Frequency distribution?
You could do that. Okay. There's other things that you could do. Any other thoughts of what you might do with those class intervals?
Make a graph out of it.
Yeah, make some sort of graph or a chart. Okay. So any questions about question number 1? So when you start doing the analysis, again, you're going to do the analysis in Excel, and then what you turn in is going to be a Word document. So in your Word document, you'll type out, and it says this a little bit later on, like question 1, and then right below that is your summary of all of these variables. And then once you finish summarizing them, you'll go to question 2. So in your Word document, you'll have question 1, all all your summary stuff for question 1 there, and then question 2. And if you read question 2, basically, you're going to do the same thing, except now we're doing it for the variables. So question 2 says, summarize the variables using frequencies, means, and standard deviations, and/or class intervals with tables, graphs, and text. So it's the same thing, but just the different variables. And I think I interrupted someone that may have had a question.
So are there, we're going to have a summary for each, like for the demographic, there will be 4 types of summary, whether it's a graph or words or whatever.
Yeah, and what I want you to do is use for each of these 2 questions, use all of the tables, graphs, and charts. So some combination of tables, graphs, charts, text, to summarize, number 1, the demographic stuff, and then number 2, the variables. And then again, how you choose to do that is totally up to you, but it is some combination of the summary techniques, I would say. So questions about 1 and 2. So looks like someone said, you said summarize years, age, and level at the company, and gender. For question 1, it's gender, age, years at company, and level at the company, because those are the 4 demographic things. And then question 2 is using text, graphs, charts, tables, etc. Question 2, determination, approval, helpfulness, development, transactions, and hours per week. So those 6 things. So questions about 1 and 2 before we move on. All right, so another question. So you want us to use tables, graphs, and text for each individual demographic? No. In question 1, you're going to summarize all 4 of those demographic things using some combination of tables, graphs, and text. But you don't, for gender, I don't need a table, a graph, text, and chart. You don't have to summarize it 4 different ways. For all 4 of those, some combination of those techniques that I've outlined, but not all 4 of those for each of the variables. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up that makes sense. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. And then again with question 2, there's 6 variables. So some combination, everything gets summarized. And then for all 6 of them collectively, some combination of table, graph, and text, charts, etc. Okay. All right, let's look at question number 3. Based on approval and transaction data only. So only those 2 columns of data. Which 3 employees within each level of the company deserve to be promoted? So either out loud so everyone can hear, or using the chat, what just popped into your mind that you need to do for those 2 columns of data, approval and transaction data?
The frequency of them?
Say it again.
You want us to find the frequency for them?
No.
Oh.
Convert the scores to Z or T scores.
Exactly. So I would take some notes on this, and that because we also cannot negate that it also says within each level of the company. So what does that tell you you're going to have to do? The within each level of the company.
You'll have to
What are you going to have
separate
to do?
out level 1
Yeah.
and 2.
Exactly. So you're going to have to put all the chiefs together, and then you're going to have to put all the managers together. And then what can you do once you have them separated into their levels? Then do what?
Convert the
Someone just
scores.
said it. Yeah. So then you're going to have to create Z's or T's for those 2 variables, approval and transaction data. So you'll have, and I'll just use the the very first person on there. Very first person on there is a chief. So you'll have him, because it's a male, and all the other chiefs in a line. And then you're going to only, again, using approval and transaction data. For each of those two variables, approval first, you'll find the Z's for the chiefs for approval. And then you'll find the Z's for the chiefs for transaction. And then what can you do then with the Z's that you can't do with just approval of 40 and transaction of 73? So can I add 40 plus 73 and make it a meaningful piece of data? No, you can't, you cannot. So what someone said a while ago is you've got to first divide them into chiefs and managers, and then transform all the chiefs' approval data into a Z or a T, and then transform all their transaction data into a T and a Z or a Z. And then what are you going to do with those Z's and T's? Or what can you then do with the Z's and T's that you can't do with 40 and 73?
Add them together.
You can add them together. And then how are you going to make your decision as who gets promoted? Because you got to come up with 3 chiefs and 3 managers that get promoted.
Alexa, stop.
So what can you do once you get them all into Z's or T's? I'm not going to tell you. So someone better say it.
You put it on a table. You put it on the work document.
You rank
No,
them
what can I do?
highest scores first, like 1 through 3.
Yeah, so once you've added them together, what's the next logical thing you're going to look at? You just said it. Say it again, Lindsay.
The highest scores, you're going to rank them 1 through 3 to decide who's going to be promoted.
Right, exactly. Okay, so another question just came in. So you want us to use a table, graph, and text for each individual demographic, Z or T? No. Okay, so that, I think that jumps back up to question number 1. So let me jump back up to question number 1. Question number 1, you've got 4 demographic things that I want you to summarize in some combination of tables, charts, graphs, and text. Question number 1 has absolutely nothing to do with Z's or T's. You're just summarizing that data in some form or fashion, graphically, in tables, text, charts, and or in text. Then you're going to do the same thing for the variables in question number 2. Some combination of summary of that in tables, graphs, charts, text, etc. Only when we get to question number 3 do you need to use Z's or T's. So either if I can see you, show me a thumbs up, or if I can't see you, use the reaction and show me a thumbs up, or ask some questions about question 3.
Question 3, are you going to want to see the work for the Z and T's?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to see, yeah, you're going to bring that data in, just snip it or copy it and put it in there, and then answer the question.
Okay.
Yeah, so, employee numbers, are the chiefs that need to be promoted, and then just use their employee number. Employee number, is the manager that should be promoted. I mean, this sort of sounds like a lot of work, but just try to make it a little kind of fun and be creative with how you present this, and think about, how you would actually present this to, this could be a legitimate task that you have to do in an internship or in a job. So, present it neatly as if you were actually in a job. Okay? All right, let's go on to question number 4. We can always circle back as needed. All right, so for determination, helpfulness, and hours per week. So those are the 3 columns that you're looking at. Which 3 males and which 3 females report the highest scores? And again, present all the data to support your conclusions in a table form. So what do you think you're going to do for determination, helpfulness, and hours per week for question number 4? So you can either, someone can say it, or someone can type it in if they want to tell us.
You separate them into males and females, then convert those into Z's and T scores, add them together.
Exactly. So it's 3 and 4 are very similar in that 3, you're looking at within different levels of the company. 4, you're looking at males versus females. And then in 4, again, using the 3 columns that are identified there, you are going to convert determination, helpfulness, and hours per week into Z's and T's. And then you can then add the Z's or T's for that and come up with the 3 females that have the highest scores, report the highest scores, and the 3 males that report the highest scores. So make sure, and I'll give you a little tidbit. Make sure when you, for 3 and 4, when you divide these out, and I'll just say what I'm going to say for number 4. So first thing you need to do is put all the males together and then all the females together. And then let's say you're working on the males on their determination. Be sure you find the mean and standard deviation for males determination and use that to find Z's or T's. And then the same thing for females. You got to find the female mean and standard deviation for, let's say, determination first, and use that to make T's and Z's. You cannot find the whole column mean and standard deviation for that because you don't want the females in the male group. So does that sort of make sense? Yeah, okay. I'm seeing some nods of the people that I can see that does make sense. So let me pause for a moment. Any questions about 3 and 4? 3 and 4 is just having you use Z's and T's. And I'll be honest with you, former students say that of a lot of the stuff that they learned in this class, using Z's or T's is among the highest used, because just like this data shows you, lots of things get measured for people, and you just can't add up. And I'm just looking again at the top person on that data. You can't add up 16 plus 40 plus 68 plus 1 plus 73 plus 50. It makes no sense. So you have to use Z's and T's to be able to do that. Okay? And then the last one, to what extent is approval related to transactions across both levels of the company? To what extent is approval related to transaction within each level of the company? So anyone can anyone pick out the key word in that tells you what type of analysis that you need to do? There's a word in there, and actually it shows up twice in there, that tells you what type of analysis that you actually need to do. Can anyone pick it out?
The dependent test, the related.
Yeah. Say it again.
The related is the word.
Yeah, related is the key word. So what did we do in class that dealt with relationships or association of variables?
Independent and dependent t-test?
No,
Oh.
no. Anyone else? And you guys did so good on this test related to what I'm talking about. Lindsay, I think you're
Okay.
talking, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was reading the question and it looked like I was
Oh, okay.
answering, but I was just kind of like
Okay.
rereading out loud.
Okay, so what do you think, anybody, what did we do? Someone said it, yay, correlation, Pearson R. Thank you. So, good job, Jonathan. All right, so what you're going to do for question number 5, the very first part, I'll read the question again. To what extent is approval related to transactions across both levels of the company? So that part of this question, you're going to look at all 45 people together, and you're going to do calculate or have Excel calculate Pearson R for that. So this is where don't we love Excel? We don't want to do this by hand for 45 people, correct? We don't. So for the first part of that question, take all the transaction scores, all the approval scores, and calculate Pearson R for them. It will be a number, a single number that was the, and then you can use, if you think back to the test that you took before spring break, look back to that data, because remember we had a table that said if it's, you know, from 0.8 to 1.00, it was a very strong relationship. So go back in your notes, look at that table, and you can write a sentence that actually interprets that data. And remember, you also have to look at, is it positive or negative? And then what are you going to have to do for the second question? To what extent is approval related to transaction within each level? So now what are we going to do? We got to go back now and separate them just like we did in question 3. So we got to look at that, those two columns of data for the chiefs, and then those 2 columns of data for the managers. So any questions about number 5?
Nope.
So go ahead.
Oh, I said nope.
Oh, okay, you said no. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to the second page of the instructions, and again, we can circle back and look at answer questions. So look at guidelines for presenting data. Go ahead and use the 2 decimal rule. There actually is a way in Excel to have Excel just go ahead and round to 2 decimals. If you haven't figured that out, just when you're presenting data, I don't need it. I don't need a string of, you know, 5 or 6 decimals. So be sure you do that. And we kind of have said number 2, but for continuous data, that's where you're going to do the means and standard deviations. And so let's circle back around and look at the data. The continuous data here, I'll tell you age, years at the company, and then really all of the variables. All of those are considered continuous data. And then for categorical data, you can do percentages. And then do not provide information beyond the data that answers the question or questions being asked. And sometimes people have just gone overboard with too much information that's really not related to a question being asked. I'll just say it like that. When you're creating tables it says the demographic information, but really any of this, higher scores, again, indicate better scores. So put the higher scores first or at the top if you're doing some sort of chart. Let's look at number 4 on here. And I asked the question, which of these 2 charts that I've provided actually is a better way to present that data, do you think? The one on the left or the one on the right?
Right.
And you can answer out loud or texture. Someone just said an answer.
Right.
I said right.
Yeah, I would say the one on the right does. And really the difference here is that when you're presenting something in a bar chart, the one on the left, anything from 7 through 15, there's no scores there. So you don't really even need that on the chart, because what it does is it squashes everything down. So it looks like all of those are very similar. But if you present it like on the right, and only include up through a possible answer of 5, it really shows a better scale of, clearly, category 1 and category 4 are higher than category 2. And you kind of don't really see the extent of that in the chart on the left. So just remember, when you're making charts, scale matters, because you don't want to sell something like in chart 1 and say, oh, none of these categories are different, when in fact they probably actually are, but the way you presented them makes it look like it may not be. So think about scale when you are asked to present something in chart form. And then number 5, your submissions should be a Word document with a mix of tables, graphs, text related to each of the 5 questions. Again, and I just said again, but I didn't mean to, but do not repeat information in tables, graphs, and text. So there's no reason for you to put in tables like the mean and standard deviation for age and years at the company, and then also say that in sentence form. So present it one way, and then that's enough. Now, if you're looking at age and you want to present the average and age and standard deviation and put that in the table, and then do a pie chart using the different class intervals I've given you, to me, that's not being redundant. So you can do that, but you don't need to tell me 4 different ways what the mean and standard deviation are. Say it one way in a sentence or in a chart, and then if you have something else with age, show it in a different way, like a pie chart or a bar chart using those class intervals. Okay? And then I've already said this, but data in your tables, graphs, and text should be brought in to Word from Excel. And then number 6 just says, use the questions as headings so that I know when you go from question 1 to question 2 to question 3 to question 4. So use the question number just to organize your paper. And again, I do want to see the data that demonstrates that you did the work, and then here is your answer. So if you only show me the answers and no work, that's not going to be sufficient enough. Okay, so go back and look at the questions, or maybe even some of the points that are in this guidelines presenting, and let's fill in any gaps that you need to. And I think I already set this up to be turned in next Tuesday at 11:59 instead of during the day. So I extended that out to let you work on it some Tuesday afternoon. So questions? Do you want us to highlight our answers so they're easy to find? That'd be great. Yep, that would be nice.
Do you think like if like for work, like if we do work inside the Excel like sheet that you give us, would pasting that like in the document, would you want that as like proof that it's all work?
Yeah, so let's say that you're working on question number 3, where you had to divide everything into different levels, and then I want to see the T's and the Z's, and then a column where you added the T's and Z's. I want to see that work, and then I want to know which chiefs need to be promoted and which managers need to be promoted based on the work that you did.
Okay.
But I want to see all the T's and Z's so that I can see why you told me, chief number 15 needs to be promoted. And I'm just making that up. I'm not saying that 15 is going to be the one that needs to be promoted. Other questions? do you think it's necessary to do another one of these, let's say on Monday?
Sure, I'm good with it.
Okay. I tell you what, by Sunday at noon, if you would like to have another meeting on Monday, and I'll be honest with you, my Monday is a little jam-packed, so I probably would need to do it at 9 a.m. on Monday. But if you feel like I would like for you to start this today, or not necessarily today, but before we have another meeting, I want you to start working on it so that I can actually answer real questions that you have, as opposed to just us reading the questions and you hearing this for the first time. So if you would like to have another Zoom, email me before Monday at noon, and I will set a Zoom up for, email me Sunday at noon, and I will set up a Zoom for Monday at 9 a.m. As needed. And if we do that, I'll send an invitation out to both classes, and whoever needs to come or wants to come can.
Okay.
And honestly, my preference is to, not to check your work per se. That becomes really difficult because if I check one person's work, then I got to check everybody's work, and that just gets out of hand with almost 80 students in the two sections of this. So I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm just gonna be honest with you, what I found is that sometimes students seem frustrated with this particular assignment because they want me to tell them exactly how to do it. Like they want me to say, I want a pie chart of this and a bar chart of that, but just be creative. I mean, there's a million different ways to answer questions 1 and 2. 3, 4, and 5, yeah, there's some right and wrong answers, but you can present that sort of however you want to, in a table, in a chart, with a sentence or something like that. I think the frustration comes with there not being a right and wrong answer or a right and wrong way to do it. There's a millions of ways to do it. So just be creative. When will the grades be out for the first Excel? I don't know. That was just due last night, so I'll, as soon as I can get to it.
I have a question about the question 1.
Okay.
Say we did a histogram for age,
Mhm.
to show that.
Uh-huh.
Then we would need to present the standard deviation for that separately. I don't know how to, like, if we chose to do it graphically somehow, and then to present the mean and standard deviation.
Yeah, so you could, so like for question number 1, you could, in sentence form, present average age and average years at the company. And then if you wanted to go in and do like a pie chart for age, then using the class intervals I gave you, then that would be, so maybe the first thing I read for your number 1 is the sentence that has those means and standard deviations. And then maybe you do a pie chart for this and a histogram for that, and then a table, or, so
Okay.
Just make it where it's easy to read. And, I would assume most of you guys have had jobs at some point in time, and, so just make it something that that's readable for if a supervisor handed you this and said, hey, I need this data analyzed. And I think, again, that's where students in the past, at least, get frustrated because I'm not telling you exactly how to do it. And so, it's more than likely that if you were given something like this, they wouldn't be very super prescriptive of how to present it. They would just say, I need these questions answered. Other questions?
For number 4, are we adding, like, are we giving the highest scores for each category, or are we adding like everyone's T-scores from the categories and like having 3 total, if that makes sense. Like
Well,
for
you're gonna have 3 males and 3 females,
mhm.
because that's part of the question. And then, so yeah, you gotta add determination, helpfulness, and hours, but you can't add it in the form I give it to you. So you got to do a Z or a T and then add it up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we're gonna have
Okay.
3 females and 3 males for like their combined determination, helpfulness, and like hours. Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep. So 3 or 4 are really a lot alike. I'm just asking you for different variables and different ways to divide the data. How easy or hard did you find what you turned in last night to do? That probably
It
wasn't very
wasn't too
hard.
bad. Like
Yeah,
once I got a
okay.
hang of it.
And you guys have, I want to say that I know from the past, you guys have had some, you guys have worked in Excel before, right? In one
A
of
little
your,
bit, yeah.
a couple of classes maybe. I actually am heading up to Colorado for the summer, not too far from now, and I have a friend up there that is a Excel whiz, and she's going to work with me this summer, like making pivot tables and stuff like that. So I'm kind of excited about that. That'll be kind of interesting. I don't really know how to do that right now. So other questions for the greater good, anybody? Everybody still doing good? I know a handful of you, I was asking that at the beginning of this, but mentally everybody's feeling strong and positive and ready to keep going. And how many of you are taking summer school classes? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Everybody
taking
got
one.
registered? Everybody's registered okay for those? That's good. Alrighty, well, I will stay on until I am the very last person, and then the system has to render this, and then I will get this put on in our class so that if you need to refer back to it, and I think there's probably other folks that for different reasons couldn't be here today, and I know they're interested in hearing this. So, oh, Mackenzie, good, I'll see you this summer. Let's see here. Do you want a text answer along with a graphical answer, or just one or the other? Yeah, so that's a good question. So that kind of goes back to don't be redundant. So if you give me the mean and standard deviation in a sentence form, you wouldn't then need to also put it into a table, let's say. But if you give me the mean and standard deviation in a sentence form, and then do a pie chart for age, that's showing me 2 different things. That's showing me the mean and standard deviation of all of them, and then you're also showing me the number of people in each of the different age categories. So just don't be, so don't do mean and standard deviation in table and then say it in sentence form. That's being redundant. I don't need you to do that. So Zoom these are helpful, these meetings, these instructional things? Okay, good. Yeah, so I don't see any other questions typed, so we can hang out and talk about the meaning of life if we need to, but I'll hang out as long as people are still here. So
Thanks for the Zoom meeting. That really helped a bit with how to figure out what to do for the next homework.
Okay, good. Okay, so be sure if you want to do this again at Monday at 9, that you send me an email by Sunday at noon, just so it gives me some time to set it up and send something out to folks.
Okay.
And I'm happy to do it if you think it'll help. But be sure if we meet on Monday that you started this so that you kind of you started playing with it a little bit, and you just need some specific answers. Okay. Have a great day, and
You
I
too.
will, like I said, all right, thank you.
Bye, Miss
Thank you.
Hamlin.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
I don't think I have any more questions, so I'm just gonna wait and see about Monday's Zoom if I start doing it and I get kind of confused because I feel like it's pretty straightforward. It's just up to
Yeah,
interpretation.
it's just, I just gotta make sure you know how to divide the data out, and just, I think that through the years, I think I've gotten these questions down to where they're make sense, but it's always easier for me to sit here and read them to you. I mean, we did today exactly what I would do in the classroom. Here's the data, here's the question. So
Okay, well,
Matthew
thank
or
you.
Ryan, you guys have any questions? I don't know if you have everybody's unmuted, so I don't know if you guys have a microphone or not.
Bye. Hopefully, I'll see you Monday if we Zoom.
Okay, all right, that'll work.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care. Ryan or Matthew, questions? Okay, well, else Matthew, Ryan, do you have a question? Okay, well, I'm going to end the meeting.